That statement was actually dropped.
Oh, but allow me to say one thing, Honorable Speaker.
So don't comment on it.
Yes, because I caught the tail end of the submissions by my colleague from Nandi on some of the unfortunate pronouncements we had from the National Assembly yesterday regarding the decision by this House to award 415 million shillings to county governments. Honorable Speaker, I think there are things that we as a House have to make very clear. Number one, when we ask for more resources to be devolved to county governments, it's not to take away from the CDF or the National Affirmative Action Fund in the National Assembly. I think what some honorable members in the National Assembly were trying to do is to poison the mind of Kenyans that, in fact, we're going to raise those funds in order to raise the 24 billion extra that this House passed for county governments. Number two, Honorable Speaker, I want the National Assembly also to address itself to the question of whether there is corruption, mismanagement, and misuse of resources in the national government. So that when they stand up and castigate county governments and say, oh, all these people travel with their girlfriends, it's not as if officers in the national government do not have girlfriends that they travel with. Mr. Speaker, if we are going to have a conversation, I think that conversation has to be an objective conversation. Mr. Speaker, finally, there has to be also a time that in this country, we demonstrate to each individual county how the money that has been allocated to the national government is spread across the 47 counties. Because there is inordinate focus, Mr. Speaker, on the money that is sent to counties from this particular House, and it represents less than 10% of the budget. Mr. Speaker, every time you ask, why are roads not being built in Nairobi? Mr. Speaker, in Nairobi alone, we have 50 stalled road projects. When you ask, you say, oh, but Nairobi received 20 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, an analysis was done of the distribution of resources at the national level from the Kenya Rural Roads Authority and from Kenya. Mr. Speaker, and by illustration, this was an analysis of the constituencies allocation from Kera and Kura in Kiambu County. And we will not be surprised that the person who was castigating Senate yesterday, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, the Member of Parliament for Kikuyu, Mr. Speaker, out of the money that is allocated, 350 million shillings allocated to Kiambu County and Akura, 220 million shillings has somehow found its way to Kikuyu constituency from where this Member of Parliament comes from. Mr. Speaker, 94% of the money under Kera is utilized in Kikuyu constituency alone, 1.45 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. And if you ask Honorable Ichung'wah to add money to the counties, Nairobi alone, Mr. Speaker, the bill for electricity that is owed to Kenya Power is 1.5 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. So that the money that Ichung'wah receives is enough to pay our electricity bills here.
Senator Gloria, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am aware we are discussing county issues, but Mr. Speaker, we still have to be guided by our standing orders. And they are very clear about discussing any other member of, a member of parliament, either from the Senate, Mr. Speaker, or from here. And imputing improper motive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I understand, Mr. Speaker,
order,
allow me.
Honorable, order,
allow me.
Faki, order.
Mr.
Proceed.
Speaker, protect me. I'm just saying, I understand that we are trying to highlight on the issues of devolution, Mr. Speaker. But can the Honorable Senator of Nairobi try and make his point without discussing another member of parliament who is actually not in the House, Mr. Speaker? That is my point of order.
Senator Gloria, which standing order has been violated?
Mr. Speaker, on, I think it's 98, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just allow me, because I know that this is how we are used to sitting me down. There is even content 101, Mr. Speaker, contents of speech. If you go to 101.3, it shall be out of order to use offensive or insulting language, whether in respect of the senators or other. Now, 4, no senator shall impute improper motive to any other senator or to a member of National Assembly, except upon a specific and substantive motion, of which at least 3 days' notice has to be given, calling in question the conduct of that senator or member of parliament. Mr. Speaker, if we want to discuss about the Honorable Member of Parliament, Kimani Ichung'wah, Mr. Speaker, Sifuna should just bring a substantive motion and we can discuss his budget of his constituency and whether he's using using his money or not. Mr. Speaker, Kimani Ichung'wah is not in the House today, so let Sifuna limit his elaborations and discussions to devolution and whatever is. We're leaving out Kimani Ichung'wah from this situation. Thank you.
Order, honorable senators. The Senator for Nairobi, as you make your intervention, kindly adhere to that standing order. Do not impute any improper motive on either your honorable colleague senators or a member of parliament. So kindly proceed as advised.
I am well guided, Honorable Speaker, but I was thinking that colleagues in this House would be more defensive of the decisions of this House because yesterday the entire Senate was being discussed, Honorable Speaker. And in fact, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable senator.
Mr. Speaker, this is an extract of an analysis of the road allocations by those two national government entities in Kiambu County as a demonstration.
Senator Gloria.
Mr. Speaker, you must protect me from people who think that by rising on points of order against me, I'm going to make them famous. Because I see them sharing on social media that Sifuna and so are in an exchange. You will have to find your own fame by the quality of debate you bring to this floor. Mr. Speaker, let me conclude. Let me conclude by saying, this, Mr. Speaker,
to conclude.
That the discussion about allocation of resources, about the needs of the county governments and the challenges to devolution have to be had in a sober space and with context, Mr. Speaker, because as I was explaining to you before the point of order, 1.4 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, is the amount of money that we require as Nairobi to pay off all our debts at Kenya Power so that all these members who come to Nairobi from those rural constituencies can continue to enjoy those services that the city provides. So when people come here and castigate decisions of this Senate, Mr. Speaker, and attack devolution on the basis of malpractices here and there, yet those similar malpractices are actually present even in the national government. And I will be hoping, Speaker, as I conclude, that when this House puts together its mediation team, they will send serious senators to the mediation team who will not go there to try and defend Kimani Ichung'wah. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable senators. Before I ask the clerk to call the next order, I have this message to pass. Honorable senators, I wish to report to the Senate that I have, pursuant to Standing Order 46.3, received the following message from the Speaker of the National Assembly regarding the decision of the National Assembly on the Senate amendments to the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024. The message dated Tuesday, 14th of May 2024, was received in the office of the Clerk of the Senate on the same date. Now, pursuant to Standing Order 46.4, I now report the message. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 41.1 and 148B of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the following message from the National Assembly. Whereas on Wednesday, 20th of March 2024, the National Assembly passed the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2024, and thereafter referred the bill to the Senate for consideration in accordance with Article 110(4) of the Constitution. And whereas on Thursday, the 2nd of May 2024, the Senate considered and passed the said bill with amendments and referred it back to the National Assembly for concurrence. Further, whereas on Monday, 13th May of 2024, the National Assembly considered and rejected the Senate amendments to the bill, thereby committing it to a mediation committee in accordance with the provisions of Article 112(2) of the Constitution. Now, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Article 112 of the Constitution and Standing Orders 41.1 and 148B of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I hereby convey the said decision of the National Assembly to the Senate and seek the appointment of 9 senators to a mediation committee to consider the bill in accordance with Article 113 of the Constitution. Honorable senators, consequent to the said decision, the Speaker of the National Assembly appointed the following members of the National Assembly to the mediation committee to consider the bill in accordance with Article 113 of the Constitution. The Honorable Ndini Nyoro, MP, the Honorable Mary Emai, MP, the Honorable David Ochieng, MP, the Honorable Nyakundi Mokaya, MP, the Honorable Samuel Moroto, MP, the Honorable Samuel Atandi, MP, the Honorable Naisula Lesuda, MP, the Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, MP, and the Honorable Ali Wario Guyo, MP. Now, Honorable Senators, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 166-2 of the Senate, and in consultation with the majority and minority leaders, I will, at the appropriate time, appoint senators to the Mediation Committee. I thank you. Next order. Next order, Clerk. You don't comment on messages, Senator for Nyandarua. Okay, honorable senators, I will, with the limited powers given to me under Standing Order 1 of the Senate Standing Orders, I will allow limited comments on that message. 3 from the majority side and 3 from the minority side. Yes. Each speaking for 3 minutes. Yes. Senator Fonandi.
Let me go here so that it is captured. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat. The reason as the majority side we supported an increment of 24 billion to 415 billion is to ensure there is equitable and equality in terms of development across the country. Mr. Speaker, it is a shaming. It is unfortunate that members of National Assembly, without running afoul of Standing Order 101, yesterday misled the country by saying we were removing CDF, Sijui Kera money. How, Mr. Speaker? And I'm wondering how can they mislead the whole country? In fact, he asked, Mr. Speaker, asking for 415 billion, Mr. Speaker. It's being modest, considering the budget of the country is 4 trillion. Mr. Speaker, in fact, the National Assembly must blame himself because the latest audited account, Mr. Speaker, is them who have taken behind. It will become a hard, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask. In fact, I'm donating myself for free to be part of mediation so that I can fix them, Mr. Speaker, at the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker. Because as Bob Marley said before he died at 36 years old, Mr. Speaker, in 1981, more fire, Mr. Speaker, he said there is much too honest in terms of running a society, Mr. Speaker. I want to challenge, and I know the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, let us allow counties have for 15 billion. Let us develop our counties, Mr. Speaker. Even if there are corruption, let us fight corruption, but give money to counties for development, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang.
Mr. Speaker, the nation must know that revenue is divided in Parliament. It is not divided at IBEC. It is not divided in Karen. It is not divided in private residences. And Mr. Speaker, I am very proud of this Senate, and more so the chair of the Finance Committee and the members of the Finance Committee, for standing up for county governments and for reasserting the role of Senate as a house that divides and allocates revenue. Mr. Speaker, when we set up that mediation committee, I hope we will put in men and women senators with spine, because in the 11th Parliament, we had mediation every year. In the 12th Parliament, we had mediation 3 out of 5 years. Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, are you implying that we have senators without spine?
Yes.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, we have a lot of senators with spine. Not all of them. But Mr. Speaker, I hope that the mediation committee will stand firm for the Senate, and they will not be intimidated by political party and partisan politics. This is about county governments. This is not about Kenya Kwanza. This is not about Azimio. And we hope that the way we stood up when you are coming up with a formula for revenue allocation, that this Senate will stand up to be counted where the Council of Governors failed at IBEC, where the National Assembly is failing county governments, that the Senate will be the house that lives up to defend and protect the interests of counties and their governments. And to the members of the National Assembly, when this money goes to counties, really, this money goes to constituencies. What we have seen of CDF, of course, there are some things on the ground we have seen, but we have also seen the cars in the parking lot coming from CDF. Let us be honest. You cannot be pointing fingers at governors and also not looking at what the rot and the problems that we have seen in allocation and distribution of the resources that should go to CDF. Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court said that this House must be involved in decisions to do with the NGCDF, with the NGAF. And Mr. Speaker, we look forward to the day that that legislative proposal will be brought before the Senate, because the Senate will do the right thing and make sure that we respect the two levels of government in this country, national and county governments. Those are the two levels of government in the Constitution. Those other creatures were of the past Constitution. Mr. Speaker, the Senate is going to do the right thing, and the men and women in that mediation committee, please do not do what they did with Linturi. Shame on them. Shame.
Senator Methu.
Honorable Speaker, we watched with great disappointment yesterday, Honorable Speaker, as our colleagues were misleading the nation. And Honorable Speaker, there is something that we would want to demonstrate that was not demonstrated at the National Assembly yesterday.